Want to bring in Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein, former Massachusetts Senator and Donald Trump supporter Scott Brown. Gentlemen, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, Maria.
Senator Brown, you first. Your observations after last night. Saw you at the Trump Towers.
Yeah, I spent a little time with Donald yesterday. Very excited, obviously. He's feeling very strong in terms of where he's at. He is the front runner. This race is over. There's no mathematical way for any of the other candidates to get the nomination.
Ted Cruz said you would say that.
Well, listen, I have a lot of respect for Ted. I think he's done a great job, especially in the ground game. But he should listen to what he's told John Kasich to basically get out because he can't mathematically win. And the reason I think that's so important, he came in third, bad third, in 4 out of the 5 states. It wasn't even close. So what does that tell you? At least if he's going to be right there in the thick of things, he should at least come in second.
Yeah.
So he's putting it all in Indiana. So is Donald Trump, and we'll see what happens.
Richard Goodstein, Donald Trump last night said that, you know what, Bernie Sanders should just go independent because he's not being treated very fairly by the Democratic committee. What do you think about that?
And you heard the laughter, even among Trump's own people, when he said that. So, I mean, this is the problem. I think there's a large part of what Donald Trump says that's untethered from reality, right? So the fact is there's zero statistical evidence to suggest that the Sanders voters would move to Trump. Every single issue that the Sanders people stand for, Donald Trump is almost 180 degrees different. I'll grant you trade is an exception, okay? But the fact of the matter is, when you look at what Trump says about keeping out Muslims, I mean, kind of go down the list, none of these things are, you know, anybody who kind of follows the policy world takes seriously, even this notion that he's tied with Hillary.
Right.
He's lost to her in the last 46 polls head-to-head. So, look, I'm glad. I like running against a guy who's delusional, right? In a business, you love to be opposite somebody who's living kind of in another planet. Great. I hope that continues.
Yeah. By the way, Democratic National Committee Chairman Debbie Wasserman Schultz also weighed in on Donald Trump calling for Sanders to run independent. Listen to what she said.
What I'm really looking forward to is that when we get to the end of this primary nominating contest, we are going to do as we have always done. Come back together, unify, and focus on what both of our candidates understand is absolutely critical, and that is making sure we can move our country forward, build on the economic progress we've had, and if you ask, and they have been repeatedly asked, either one of our candidates, they both very clearly say they understand what's at stake in this election.
Scott Brown, you wanted to weigh in there?
Well, first of all, the response by, that we just heard is one of the reasons I think Donald Trump is going to win, because they're not talking about what he's talking about. All the exit polls show that the issues that he's touching upon, the American people are thinking about. They may not be saying it publicly, but they're absolutely talking about it. And I think Bernie Sanders has been treated unfairly. The superdelegate process in New Hampshire, he crushed Hillary Clinton and basically got the same amount of delegates. That process, as you know, was meant to keep Jesse Jackson out and other usurpers. And so, yeah, that process is wrong. And what Donald has done and what Bernie should have done earlier is to point out that, in fact, hey, listen, we need to change this going forward. And I think what Bernie's going to do is he's going to stay in. He's going to stay in and continue to try to peel off those delegates like Barack did with Hillary the first time.
Yeah. I agree with you, Senator, because I think why is it such an unorthodox idea that Bernie Sanders would run as an independent? He's only been a Democrat for a year. I mean, why should we assume that he's so committed to the Democratic Party?
Can I ask Richard a question? Because Richard, don't be offended by this, but, you know, I work for Scott Walker and Jeb Bush, and you guys sound like their campaigns. And so I'm just asking you guys, do you think you're underestimating Donald Trump in terms of what his skill set is and his verbal dexterity when he eventually takes on Secretary Clinton?
Excellent question. Here's what I think. Over time, going back to January when Donald Trump was actually beating Hillary Clinton by 3 percentage points, that's gone from tied to Hillary's up 3, 6, 9, 11 in the most recent poll that came out. The fact is the trend line is miserable for Donald Trump. And even what we just heard about this whole Bernie Sanders stuff, he's not being treated unfairly. Hillary Clinton has almost 3 million more votes. She's got almost 300 more pledged delegates. Forget these super delegates. So that's fantasy, right? So, again, I love it when I hear people engaging in this stuff because it's just, again, untethered from reality. Might Donald Trump come out of left field? Yes. But if you listen to every opposition researcher on the Democratic side, they will tell you that of the stuff they've come up with against Trump, they've only seen evidence of 20% 100% of it. So I'm saying bring it on. If you want to have that fight and get in the gutter, I have no doubt that Hillary Clinton will win that one.
Donald Trump is the only politician in this country who can say whatever he wants to and get away with it.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's left field. He's been winning from the get-go. What left field, Richard?
What does it mean to get away with something when 65, 70% of the voters in a general election consider you unfavorably? I don't understand what that means to say get away with it. People don't like him.
Well, Richard, his favorability numbers have been improving among women.
Richard,
and again, the polls have moved in his favor. Don't underestimate him, Richard. Don't underestimate him.
Richard, what it also means is that no one trusts Hillary Clinton. They don't like her. She hasn't driven in 20 years. I mean, she has some very high negatives as well. And what you're going to see in this election is two people with probably the highest negatives that we've ever had in this country running for president. And if you put those two factors together, the fact that Hillary still has some very looming and real issues, it's going to be a problem for her. So it's going to be an exciting race. I'm excited to be, to see what happens. And the American people will have some real choices coming up.
Let's look at what they were looking at after they voted last night. Dagan's on exit poll data this morning. Dagan.
So let's look at the issue of trade. So there's some voters out there who think that trade does create more U.S. jobs. Pennsylvania Republicans. Ted Cruz did fairly well. Almost 3 out of 10 voters who think trade creates jobs, but Trump got 48% of those voters. And in addition, Trump dominated among voters, of course, who think trade takes jobs away from U.S. workers. Moving on to Wall Street, Ted Cruz and John Kasich scored well. About a quarter of voters who think Wall Street does help create jobs for the U.S. economy, but Trump got around half or more of those voters, in addition to dominating among people who think Wall Street hurts the U.S. economy. And how is Donald Trump doing with the ladies? Not badly. 55% in Pennsylvania, 54% in Connecticut, 47% in Maryland. He got 59% of the female vote in New York. But again, if these numbers are moving in the right direction, it'll help him.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, the women issue was one that keeps coming up, that and Hispanics. And when you see these mini victories, like last night, like New York, he took women in New York, or like Nevada, he took women there. You have to believe that you can't really believe overall that there's a brushstroke approach to this. It's mixed.
My big question about him when I was watching his speech last night, can Donald Trump be the same person? Can he be the candidate that we know already, but still be a better candidate? Can he be his authentic self and still woo people who might not be on board with him?
And that's the challenge, Reagan.
That's a question I don't have an answer
to. I think it's, listen, he's been doing it 10 months. He's running against seasoned politicians. He's learning and growing, and we'll see what happens.